members of the Presidential Task Force, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, I welcome you all to the national briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 for Monday, 31st of August 2020. As we enter the last few days of the extended ease lockdown phase of the nation's response this week, the Presidential Task Force, like the global community, is confronted with a series of emerging new developments around the characteristics of the COVID-19 pandemic. As we are all aware, the global number of confirmed cases has exceeded the 25 million mark. This is attributable to resurgence in countries hitherto considered to have effectively contained the virus, while a good number of countries that have relaxed restriction measures are others actually reintroducing such, which in some cases are being made more stringent on the basis of lessons learned. The Presidential Task Force has observed that South Africa is no longer in the top 5 with the global cumulative cases. It has similarly observed that Ethiopia is also rising strongly. The Presidential Task Force will continue to monitor developments all over Africa, even as we prepare to open up the international airspace for flights. The Presidential Task Force has also observed that from the point the global numbers entered the 28 million, growth in cases has been on the average of 1 million cases every 4 to 5 days. This is a trend that deserves a lot of attention, and the PTF is doing that. For us in Nigeria, the last 3 weeks have shown a slowdown in the number of confirmed cases. Indeed, in the last 4 months of testing, the lowest daily figure of confirmed cases, 138, was reported on the 30th August 2020. The PTF still urges caution and vigilance on the declining numbers because the virus is still potent and very dangerous. This position is informed by the fact, in spite of our enhanced testing capacity, the number of samples collected for testing have not been very encouraging. While we intensify our targeted testing synergy and strategy, we still urge the states to expand the scope of their sample collection. The following 4 slides will illustrate the situation of testing in Nigeria. If you look at the slides that we have there, which Mrs. Ilorin would elaborate much more, you can see that in the month of April, our collections were just below 2,000 or so. I think it was below 20,000. May went up a little bit above 40,000 sample collections. Look at the rates of confirmed cases, the one in orange. In June, it went higher. In August, it got up to 140,000 plus, with correspondingly the confirmed of cases also high. But look at the drop in the month of August. So when we go to the month of August, with expanded collection sites, we were collecting less samples than even when we did not have as many collection sites as we had or we have in the month of August. The second slide, are we doing better in sample collection? Obviously, from these projections, you know that we are not doing better. States with a decrease in sample collection in the month of July were just 7. In the month of August, by the 25th of August, the number of states had risen to 32. And in all parameters, you can see the decline. I will leave the technical aspect of it to Mr. Lori to give you more specific insight into what is happening. The third slide, are states doing better in sample collections? The biggest increases in the month of July are there. The biggest decreases are there. She would explain and give you further details with whether we are doing better with sample collections. And the last of the slides is where are the states tested? You will see specifically the locations where the states are tested. And you notice that there has been a very sharp decline in testings and the locations of the testings as you compare July and the month of August. On a very good note, the last 7 days have shown a consistently greater number of discharges than confirmed cases. Particularly, we note with delight the report that Professor Akin Abayomi, the Lagos State Commissioner for Health, like many other Nigerians, have recovered from the infection. The PTF congratulates all those that have recovered and urge them to tell their stories. The Presidential Task Force also urges that the best choice to make is to avoid contracting the virus by strictly observing the non-pharmaceutical measures and other guidelines issued. Nigerians will recall that at the outbreak of the pandemic, it was predicted that the African continent, with its weak health infrastructure and propensity to high disease burden, would be the worst hit. A recent publication by the Weekly Science Review has indicated that despite having 70% of the global population, Africa has accounted for just 5% of global confirmed COVID-19 cases and 3% of deaths. Furthermore, a recent study by a group of African countries in East Africa indicates that Africa has weathered the storm of the pandemic with a death ratio of 1 to 10,000 persons at a total of 23,000 so far. According to the study, far more Africans have been infected with the virus and are now resistant to it for reasons such as more exposure to variants of the coronavirus and regular exposure to malaria and other infectious diseases, which prime the African immune system to fight new pathogens. The PTF is, however, studying the manifestation of the virus in Nigeria and in other countries and continents in order to understand the nature. This should ordinarily give us encouragement that we are winning the war against the COVID-19 pandemic. But unfortunately, the science, data, and experience from other parts of the world indicates that such data should be viewed with extreme caution, as it is prone to be very deceptive and could be misleading if we let down our guards and be influenced to deviate from our strategy of cautious optimism that has brought Nigeria this far. Equally important for us in Nigeria is that we are seeing a gradual shift in areas of high infection burden, with Plateau State reporting the highest number of confirmed cases. Of course, this could be related to increased testing by citizens of the state. However, we also need to look at the flip side, that there are a number of highly undetected cases lying around which we need to discover and deal with early. The World Health Organization has published a draft landscape of COVID-19 candidate vaccines. As at 20th of August 2020, a total 173 candidate vaccines are under evaluation. 33 are under clinical evaluation, 8 at phase 3 trials. 143 candidate vaccines are in preclinical evaluation. As the Presidential Task Force has always maintained, early testing, detection, tracing, and treatment remains the second best option for dealing with this pandemic, with the first being staying safe. In this wise, we implore Nigerians to get tested and present cases requiring treatment early to reduce our unavoidable fatalities. Testing positive to coronavirus is not a death sentence. Not testing and concealing cases of symptoms and presenting late is what leads to death. Get tested and get tested now. As we plan to reopen more sectors, we must stay the course and stick with our winning strategy, which is anchored on the ability of our health institutions to contain the virus, while we as citizens wear our mask properly, stay away from crowded places, avoid mass gatherings, maintain simple hygienic practices, and as much as possible protect the elderly and most vulnerable to this pandemic. It is in the above context that the Presidential Task Force appreciates the ongoing calls for reopening of the education sector, and indeed some subnationals are already making preparations for such. Whilst the PTF does not discourage making such preparations, we need to be guided by experiences from countries such as Germany, France, the United States, and the UK, where opening of schools in some cities led to an increase in confirmed cases and fatalities. As we end this phase, the PTF will be submitting the 7th interim report to Mr. President and will be guided by his directives on the next phase. The decisions and approvals will be transmitted at the national briefing on Thursday, 3rd of September 2020. I now have the privilege to call on the Honorable Minister of Health, thereafter the representative of the DG, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, and the National Coordinator to provide you with technical updates. Thank you so much for your support, your attention, and have a very good evening.